Audiobooks present On the Brevity of Life by Lucius Annaeus Seneca. The majority of mortals, Paulinus, complain about the meanness of nature. Because we are begotten for a short span of time, because these periods of time that she gives us run so swiftly, so rapidly that, with very few exceptions, life leaves the others stranded in the very preparations for their life. And for this misfortune, in their common opinion, not only the general populace and the ignorant crowd groan. This sentiment has also provoked the complaints of distinguished men. Hence comes the proclamation of the best of physicians. Life is short, the knowledge long. Hence comes the grievance, very inappropriate in a wise man of Aristotle, when he presents a claim against nature. She has granted animals so much life that they prolong it for 5 or 10 generations. For man, begotten for so many and remarkable things, the end is much nearer. We do not have a short time, but we lose a lot. Our life is long enough, and it has been given to us in abundance for the realization of the highest enterprises, if the whole of it is well invested. But as soon as it is squandered through luxury and apathy, as soon as it is not dedicated to anything good, when at last our final trial calls upon us, we perceive that the life we did not understand was running has already passed. So it is, we do not receive a short life, but we make it so. And we are not poor in it, but spendthrifts. Just as vast fortunes, worthy of a king, as soon as they fall into the hands of a bad owner, instantly vanish. And yet, no matter how modest they are, if they are placed in the hands of a good administrator, they grow with their use. Thus, our life proves to be very extensive for the one who organizes it well. Why do we complain about nature? She has behaved kindly. Life, provided you know how to use it, turns out to be long. One is dominated by insatiable greed, another by his officious application in useless endeavors. One soaks himself in wine, another becomes dull with indolence. One is exhausted by his ambition, always dependent on the decisions of others. Another, his passionate desire to trade, takes him around all lands, all seas, with the hope of profit. Some are tormented by their passion for war, never failing to be attentive to the dangers of others or anguished by their own. There are those whom their veneration for their superiors, in no way grateful, wears out in a voluntary slavery. Many have been kept busy by their claims to the fortune of others or their concern for their own. The majority, who are not chasing anything concrete, have been launched into renewed projects by their erratic, inconstant, self-disgusted volatility. Some do not like at all where they could direct their course, but their destiny overtakes them languishing and yawning, so much so that I do not doubt that what is said in the greatest of poets by way of an oracle is true. The portion of life we live is short. Indeed, all the remaining stretch is not life, but time. Vices besiege and surround them on all sides and do not let them rise or lift their eyes to contemplate the truth, but hold them submerged and fixed in their passion. It is never possible for them to come to their senses. If perhaps some respite happens to them by chance, like a deep sea, in which there is also agitation after the storm, they are shaken and never rest from their passions. Do you think I am talking about those whose misfortunes are obvious? Look at those to whose prosperity people flock. They are drowned by their possessions. How overwhelming their riches are for many! How many have had their blood sucked by their eloquence and the daily obligation to show off their talent? How many are emaciated by their continuous pleasures? How many are left with no freedom by the accumulation of clients that besieges them? Finally, review them all, from the lowest to the highest. This one summons, this one appears. That one is in a bind, that one defends him, that one judges him. None is concerned with himself. Each one wears himself out for the other. Ask about those whose names are well known. You will see that they are recognized by these signs, that one is the servant of that one, This one is the servant of that one. None is his own master. Furthermore, the irritation of some is truly senseless. They complain about the slight of their superiors because they have not had time for them when they wanted an audience. Does one who never has time for himself dare to complain about the haughtiness of another? He, however, with a certainly impertinent air, has looked at you at times, whoever you may be. He has inclined his ears to your words. He has welcomed you to his side. You have never deigned to look at yourself or listen to yourself. Therefore, you do not have to assert these good offices before anyone, since, when you carried them out, you did not really want to be with another, but you could not be with yourself. Although all the talents that have ever shone agree on this single point, they will never sufficiently marvel at this obfuscation of the minds of men. They do not consent to anyone invading their properties, and if a small conflict arises over the dimension of the lands, they run quickly to stones and weapons. They let others enter their lives. Moreover, they even introduce their future owners themselves. No one is found who wants to share his money. Among how many does each one distribute his life? They are strict when it comes to preserving their patrimony. As soon as there is an opportunity to waste time, they are exceedingly lavish with the only thing in which avarice is honorable. Therefore, it is good to single out some of the crowd of the oldest. We see that you have reached the extreme of a human life. 100 or more years weigh you down. Come then, call your life to account. Calculate how much of that time your creditor has taken, how much your lover, how much your king, how much your client, how much the quarrels with your wife, how much the reprimands to your slaves, how much your officious walks around the city. Add the illnesses we catch through our own fault. Add also the time that has passed without profit. You will see that you have fewer years than you calculate. Recall, when you have shown yourself firm with yourself in your purposes, how many of your days have ended as you had planned, when you have had profit from yourself, when a natural expression, when a fearless spirit. What works of yours remain done in such a long time? How many have stolen your life without you noticing what you were losing? How much the useless pain, the foolish joy, the anxious greed, the hollow conversation have taken, how little they have left you of your own. You will understand that you die prematurely. What is there then in this case? That, as if you were always going to live, you live. Your fragility is never present to you. You do not observe how much time has already passed. You lose it as if there were an overflow and in abundance, while perhaps precisely that day that you consecrate to something, either a person or a thing, is the last. You fear everything as mortals, you want everything as immortals. You will hear most people say, "At the age of 50, I will take refuge in leisure. 60 will free me from my obligations." And ultimately, what guarantees of a longer life do you receive? Who will consent for that to turn out as you dispose? Aren't you ashamed to reserve the remnants of your life for yourself, and to destine for beneficial reflection only the time that you can no longer dedicate to anything? How late it is to begin to live precisely when one must leave it! What a foolish oblivion of the mortal condition! To defer good resolutions until the age of 50 or 60, and to want to begin life from a point to which few have prolonged it. You will see the most powerful and highly placed people letting slip words according to which they opt for leisure, praise it, and prefer it to all their possessions. They desire at those moments, if possible without risk, to descend from their pedestal. Indeed, even if nothing harms or strikes it from outside, prosperity collapses upon itself. The divine Augustus, whom the gods supported more than anyone, did not cease to ask for rest for himself and to seek a break from politics. Any conversation of his always reverted to his hoping for leisure. He distracted his concerns with this consolation, sweet, although false. Someday he was going to live for himself. In a letter sent to the Senate after assuring that his rest was not going to be devoid of dignity or in contradiction with his previous glory, I have found these words: "But that can be done more gladly than promised. To me, however, the desire for a time so longed for by me has led me, since the joy of the realization is still delayed, to anticipate some pleasure with the charm of words." Leisure seemed to him a matter of such importance that, since he could not do it in practice, he took it in advance with his thought. He, who saw everything dependent only on him, who determined the fate of men and nations, joyfully dreamed of the day when he would divest himself of his greatness. He had verified how much sweat those goods that shone throughout all lands cost him, how many veiled worries they concealed. Obliged to engage in combat first against his fellow citizens, then against his colleagues, finally against his relatives, he shed blood on land and sea. Led by war through Macedonia, Sicily, Egypt, Syria, and Asia, and practically all the coasts, he directed his armies, weary of the massacres of Romans, to foreign wars. While he pacifies the Alps and reduces the enemies who had burst into the middle of peace and the empire, while he transfers the borders beyond the Rhine and the Euphrates and the Danube, in the city itself the daggers of Murena, of Capio, of Lepidus, of Ignatius, of others were being sharpened against him. He had not yet escaped their snares, and his daughter and so many noble young men tied by adultery as by an oath terrified his already broken age, and Eulus, and again a woman who became fearsome next to an Antony. These wounds he had extirpated along with the limbs themselves. Others were reborn. Like a body overloaded with blood, at every moment it burst somewhere. Therefore he longed for leisure. His concerns were relieved with the hope and the thought of it. This was the longing of the one who could make everyone's longings come true. Marcus Cicero, tossed between the Catalines and the Clodi, the Pompeys and the Crassi, on one side manifest enemies. On the other side, doubtful friends, while he suffers the swell along with the Republic and holds it when it was already going to sink, seeing himself finally dragged away, neither composed in prosperity nor patient with adversity. How many times does he curse that consulship of his? Praised not without reason, but without moderation. What lamentable words he utters in a letter to Atticus, when Pompey, the father, had already been defeated, and his son was still rebuilding his broken army in Hispania. "Do you ask me," he says, "what I'm doing here? I am in my property in Tusculum, half free." He then adds other expressions in which he deplores the past time and complains about the present and distrusts the future. Half free, Cicero called himself. But, by Hercules, a wise man will never stoop to such a humiliating adjective. He will never be half free, but of a freedom always complete and solid, loose and master of his actions and superior to others. What then can be above the one who is above fortune? Livius Drusus, an impetuous and violent man, after he had promoted new laws and the disaster of the Gracchi, supported by an enormous crowd from all of Italy, not clearly seeing a way out for a situation that he could neither dominate, nor was he free to abandon once set in motion. Cursing his restless life from the beginning, is said to have said that only he had never been granted, not even as a child, a vacation. For he dared, even under guardianship and dressed with the praetexta, to recommend defendants to the judges and to interpose his influence in the forum, with such efficacy, in fact, that it is noted that some trials were swindled by him. Where would such premature ambition not launch itself? You could notice that such precocious daring would lead to enormous disaster, both private and public. Therefore, he complained late that no vacation had been granted to him, being rebellious since childhood and burdensome for the forum. It is debated whether he himself attempted against his own life, for he suddenly collapsed upon receiving a wound in the groin, And while someone could doubt that his death was voluntary, no one could doubt that it was opportune. It is unnecessary to remember the many who, even when they seemed the most fortunate to others, gave authentic testimony against themselves, abhorring all the activity of their years. But with these complaints they neither changed others nor themselves. In effect, once they have burst into words, the sentiments fall back into their customs. Your life, by Hercules, even if it is prolonged for more than 1,000 years, will be reduced to the narrowest limits. Those vices will not leave any century undevoured. Now, this space, which, no matter how much nature crosses it running, reason widens, is inevitable that it escapes you quickly. For you neither seize it nor retain it, nor put a brake on the most fleeting thing of all, but you let it vanish as a superfluous and remediable thing. Now then, in the first place I count those who have time for nothing more than wine and lust. For no one is more shamefully busy. The others, although they let themselves be captivated by a vain image of glory, still go astray with a certain dignity. Even if you enumerate to me the greedy, the irascible, and those who carry out unjust hatreds or wars, all those act badly with more manliness. The dishonor of those who give themselves up to the stomach and lust is infamous. Review all their moments, notice how much time they waste making calculations, how much time weaving deceits, how much time feeling fear, how much time courting, how much time being courted, what quantity their own and others' lawsuits steal from them, what quantity the banquets, which are already a true obligation. You will see how they do not let them breathe, whether they are their ills or their goods. Finally, everyone agrees that an obsessed man cannot exercise any office, neither eloquence nor the liberal professions, since his distracted spirit does not allow anything to settle in its depths, but vomits everything as if it had been forced into him. Nothing is less proper for an obsessed man than living. Of no other thing is the learning more difficult. The cultivators of other sciences are found everywhere and in great numbers, but in some of them, very young people seem to have instructed themselves so well that they could instruct others about them. To live, one must learn throughout life, and what may perhaps surprise you more, throughout life, one must learn to die. So many great men, abandoning all baggage, once they had renounced riches, positions, pleasures, only did this until their last moments, to be learning to live. Most of them, however, left life after recognizing that they still did not know. How much less will those know? Believe me, it is characteristic of the eminent man, who is above human aberrations, not to allow anything to be taken away from his time, and his life turns out to be very long, precisely because all that has been prolonged has remained entirely free for him. No moment has remained inactive and idle. None has been ceded to another person, since he has not found anything worthy of exchanging for his time, as he is a very jealous administrator of it. Thus, for him it was sufficient. On the other hand, it is inevitable that it is lacking for those from whose life people have taken a large part. And you do not have to think that they do not sometimes notice their loss. For sure, you will hear most of those whom a great prosperity overwhelms exclaim before crowds of clients or lawsuits or other honest tribulations from time to time, "It is impossible for me to live." How is it not going to be impossible for you? All those who claim you for themselves subtract you from yourself. That defendant, how many days did he take from you? How many that candidate? How many that old woman tired of burying heirs? How many that sick person, imaginary in order to spur the greed of those who watch out for his inheritance? How much that more powerful friend who retains you not out of friendship but out of ostentation? Check, I tell you, and recount the days of your life. You will see that very few and reluctant ones remain to your credit. The one who has obtained the bundles he longed for wishes to leave them and continually says, When will this year pass? That one organizes some games, whose commission he greatly valued getting. When, he says, will I be free of this? That lawyer is disputed throughout the forum, and fills any place with a large concurrence beyond where they can hear him. When, he says, will the trials be suspended? Everyone accelerates their life and strives through their eagerness for the future, through their boredom with the present. On the contrary, the one who does not leave any moment without dedicating it to his interests, the one who organizes all his days as if they were the last, neither yearns for tomorrow nor fears it. What new pleasure can an hour already bring him? Everything is known to him, everything experienced to the point of satiety. As for the rest, let fortune dispose as it wishes. His life is already safe. Something can be added to it. Nothing can be taken away, and it can be added just as to a man already full and saturated something to eat that he also does not desire and takes. So, you do not have to think, in view of gray hairs and wrinkles, that one has lived a long time. That one has not lived a long time, but has existed for a long time. What then, if you thought that he had sailed a lot, the one whom a furious storm, catching him outside the port, has dragged here and there and has taken in circles through the same areas thanks to the alternations of the unleashed winds from all directions? That one has not sailed a lot, but has been tossed around a lot. I usually marvel when I see some asking for time, and those who ask for it very well disposed. The former and the latter contemplate that for which time has been asked, neither one nor the other, in fact, time itself, as if they were asking for nothing, as if they were giving nothing. They play with the most valuable of all things. It is that it deceives them because it is an immaterial thing, because it does not jump to the sight, and that is why they price it very cheaply. Moreover, its value is practically null. Men receive their annuities and largesses with gratitude, and for them they rent their work, or their effort, or their zeal. No one values time. They use it without restrictions, as if it were free. But those very people you will see, if the danger of death is very close, embracing the knees of the doctors, if they fear a death penalty, willing to disperse all their possessions to live. So great is the contradiction of their sentiments in them. And if it were possible, in the same way as the past years of each one, to put before their eyes the number of the future ones, how they would tremble who saw that they had few left, how they would economize them. Well then, it is easy to administer what is fixed, no matter how scarce it is. What you do not know when it will be lacking must be preserved with more care. However, you do not have to think that they are unaware of how expensive a thing it is. They usually tell those they appreciate extremely that they are willing to give them a part of their years. They give it and do not know what they are doing. On the other hand, they give it in such a way that they take it away from themselves without the benefit of the others. But precisely this, that they take it away, they do not notice. That is why the loss of something whose decrease is invisible is tolerable to them. No one will restore your years to you. No one will return you to yourself again. Life will go where it began and will not reverse or stop its march. It will not make any fuss at all. It will not warn us of its speed at all. It will glide quietly. It will not be prolonged by the command of a king, nor by favoritism to a people. Just as it set in motion from the first day, it will run. It will never deviate. It will never be delayed. What is going to happen? That you are distracted, life hurries. Meanwhile, death will present itself, for which, whether you want to or not, you must have time. Can anything more senseless be mentioned than of those men who boast of their prudence? They are anxiously busy so that they can live better. At the expense of life, they build their life. They organize their plans for a distant future. Now then, the greatest loss of life is the delay. It eliminates the current day. It swindles the present while it promises what is to come. The greatest obstacle to living is the expectation, which depends on tomorrow, wastes today. You dispose of what is placed in the hands of fortune, you discard what is in yours. Where are you looking? Where are you straining? Everything that is to come is in question. Live for the day. Thus cries the greatest of the bards, and as inspired by a divine mouth, sings a healthy song. All the best days of life to the miserable men flee first. Why do you hesitate? He says, why do you stop? If you do not seize it, it flees from you. And even when you seize it, it will flee from you. Thus, against the fleetingness of time, one must compete with the swiftness in using it, and one must gulp it down as from a rapid torrent that is not going to run forever. It also fits perfectly when criticizing the endless hesitation the fact that he does not say the best era, but the best days. Why? Calm and placid in the midst of such a precipitate flight of time, do you promise yourself months and years in long succession as your greed sees fit? He is talking to you about some days and precisely about how they flee. Is it then doubtful that all the best days flee from miserable men, that is, busy men? Their still childlike spirits are taken by surprise by old age, to which they arrive unprepared and unarmed. For they have foreseen nothing. They have suddenly fallen into it without suspecting it. They did not notice that it was approaching every day, just as either a conversation or a reading or a concentrated meditation entertains those who are traveling, and they find out that they have arrived sooner than that they were approaching. So this journey of life, permanent and very accelerated, which we make at the same pace whether awake or asleep, is not evident to the busy except at its end. If I intend to separate what I have raised by parts and their arguments, many occur to me with which to demonstrate that the life of the busy is the shortest. Fabius, not one of those professional philosophers, but one of the true and old-fashioned ones, used to say that one must fight against feelings with boldness, not with subtleties, and one must drive away their lines not with insignificant blows, but with a charge, that therefore they must be crushed, not pinched. However, to censure those for their aberration, one must teach them, not just grieve for them. Life is divided into 3 stages: that which has been, that which is, that which will be. Of them, that which we are passing is brief, that which we are going to pass, uncertain, that which we have passed, secure. This is, then, that in which fortune has lost its rights, that which cannot be subjected again to the whim of anyone. This is what the busy lose, for they do not have time to look at the past, and if they do, the memory of things they regret is unpleasant to them. Thus, reluctantly they push back their spirit to the time badly lost, and they do not dare to remember that whose defects, even those that infiltrated thanks to the attractiveness of momentary pleasure, become evident when reviewing them. No one but the one who has done everything under his own criterion, which never makes a mistake, willingly goes back to the past. The one who has desired many things ambitiously, the one who has despised them proudly, the one who has triumphed despotically, the one who has deceived perfidiously, the one who has grasped greedily, the one who has squandered lavishly. It is natural that he fears his memories. Well then, this is the inviolable and sacred portion of our time, which has overcome all human misfortunes, which has escaped the empire of fortune, which neither scarcity nor fear nor the nuisances of illnesses alter. This cannot be disturbed or snatched away. Its possession is perpetual and free of fears. Only one by one the days present themselves, and even at intervals. On the contrary, all those of the past time, when you order it, will come, will consent to be examined and retained at your will, something that the busy do not have time to do. It is characteristic of a calm and placid mind to move through all the stages of its life. The spirits of the busy, as if they were under a yoke, cannot turn and look back. Your life, therefore, falls into a bottomless pit, and just as no matter how much you throw whatever you want, it is useless if there is nothing underneath to sustain and preserve it. Likewise, it does not matter at all how much time is granted. If it does not have where to support itself, it filters through the cracked and porous spirits. The present is a very short time, to the point that it really seems non-existent to some, for it is always moving, flowing, and rushing. It ceases to exist before arriving, and does not admit more delay than the universe and the stars, whose always incessant movement never remains in the same place. Only to the busy, therefore, does the present time, which is so fleeting that it cannot be seized, concern, and even that is subtracted from them, being busy in many chores. Do you want to know, finally, to what extent they do not live long? Look at how much they wish to live long. Already decrepit old men, they beg with their offerings for the extension of a few years. They in turn pretend to be younger. They flatter themselves with this lie, and lie to themselves as willingly as if they were also deceiving the fates. But when some ailment already reminds them of their mortal condition, in what way do they die terrified? Not as if they were leaving life, but as if they were being taken out. They loudly proclaim that they have been stupid, for they have not lived, and that in case of being freed from that indisposition they are going to live in leisure. Then they think about how they have procured uselessly things they did not enjoy, how all their work has been in vain. On the contrary, those whose life unfolds far from all occupation, how is it not going to be extensive for them? Nothing is lessened from it. Nothing is scattered here and there. Nothing from there is delivered to fortune. Nothing is lost through negligence. Nothing is impaired by prodigality. Nothing is superfluous. All of it, so to speak, is placed at interest. Thus, no matter how little it is more than enough. And that is why, at the moment when his final day arrives, the wise man will not hesitate to go to death with a firm step. Perhaps you ask yourself whom I call busy. You do not have to think that I only say it to those whom the dogs, finally incited against them, expel from the basilica, to whom you see drown with all honors in their own bustle or with all the slights in that of others, to whom their duties take out of their houses to crash them against the doors of others, to those whom the praetor's spear does not let rest for the sake of an infamous gain that will one day burst like an abscess. The leisure of some is busy, in their villa or in their bed, in the midst of solitude. Even though they have moved away from everyone, they are tedious to themselves. Their life should not be called leisurely, but idle occupation. Do you call him leisurely who classifies with anxious precision his Corinthian vases, valuable due to the mania of a few, and consumes most of his days in rusty metals? He who sits in the exercise ground, what an abomination indeed, we no longer even suffer Roman vices. Fond of young wrestlers? He who separates the herds from his own, already oiled in pairs of age and color? He who maintains the novice athletes? What? Do you call those leisurely who spend many hours with the barber, while they shave what has grown perhaps the night before, while they hold a consultation about each of the hairs, while they fix their disheveled hair or push the disappearing hair forward from both sides onto the forehead? How they become irritated if the barber has been somewhat clumsy, as if he were shaving a man. How they ignite if a hair of their hair has been cut, if some have been left out of place, if all have not fallen into their corresponding curl. Which of these men does not prefer that the state be broken rather than his hair? Who is not more worried about the arrangement of his head than about his health? Who does not prefer to be more elegant rather than more honest? Do you call these men leisurely, busy among combs and mirrors? What about those who have set out to compose, listen to, learn songs while their voice, whose correct emission nature made excellent and very simple. They twist with the ups and downs of an inadequate melody. Those whose fingers always sound while they measure some poem for their doublet. Those who, when they are dedicated to serious tasks, even often sad ones, let the humming of a melody be heard. Those men do not have leisure, but useless business. By Hercules, I would not put their banquets among their free time. When I see how carefully they arrange the silver, how meticulously they gird the tunics of their pleasure slaves, how attentive they are to how the wild boar comes out of the hands of the cook, with what speed, when the signal is given, the beardless slaves run to their chores, with how much art the birds are carved into not at all irregular pieces, how diligently the unhappy little boys clean the drool of the drunkards. With this they earn a reputation for elegance and magnificence, and to such an extent do their ills pursue them in all the vicissitudes of their life, that they neither drink nor eat except out of interest. Nor would I count among the leisurely those who move in a chair or in a litter from here to there, and appear at the hours of their walks as if it were not possible for them to miss them, those whom another must remind when they should wash, when to swim, when to dine. To such an extent do they dissolve in the excessive lassitude of their refined spirit, that they cannot know by themselves if they are hungry. I am told that one of those refined men, if one is to call refinement unlearning one's own life and conduct as a man, placed in the chair, asked, "Am I sitting down yet?" Do you think that this man, who ignores whether he is sitting, knows whether he lives, whether he sees, whether he is at leisure? I would not be able to say clearly what makes me feel more pity, that he ignored it or that he pretended to ignore it. They suffer, in fact, the oblivion of many things, but they also feign that of many. Certain vices please them as if they were proofs of their happiness. It seems too plebeian and contemptible for a man to know what he is doing. Now go and maintain that mimes invent many things to criticize our debauchery. By Hercules, they overlook more things than they invent, and the enormous abundance of incredible vices in this era, imaginative only for this, has reached the extreme that we can now denounce the negligence of the mimes. That there is someone who with refinements has spoiled himself to the point of trusting in another if he is sitting. Then this one is not a leisurely man. You could give him another name. He is a sick man. Moreover, he is a dead man. The leisurely man is the one who also has the sensation of his leisure. But this half-alive man, who needs a witness to distinguish the positions of his own body, how can he be the master of any time? It is tedious to review one by one those whose life has been consumed by bandits, or the ball, or the care of baking their body in the sun. Those whose pleasures have a lot of business are not leisurely. Indeed, no one will doubt that those who entertain themselves in the study of useless erudition, of whom there is already a tremendous troop among the Romans, do not do something laboriously. That obsession to inquire about how many rowers Ulysses had, whether the Iliad or the Odyssey had been written before, besides whether they were by the same author, and a series of other details of this kind, which, if you keep them to yourself, do not help your silent knowledge at all. If you publish them, you do not seem wiser, but more tedious, was characteristic of the Greeks. Behold, the vain fondness for learning unnecessary things has also invaded the Romans. A few days ago, I heard one who recounted what each of the Roman generals had been the first to do. Duilius was the first who won in a naval combat. Curius Dentatus was the first who carried elephants in a triumph. And even those anecdotes, despite not aiming at genuine glory, at least deal with examples of civic actions. Such a science is not going to be useful, but it is capable of entertaining us with the attractive triviality of the details. Let us also leave in the hands of the curious the question of who was the first who convinced the Romans to board a ship. That was Claudius, for the same reason nicknamed Codex, because an assembly of many boards among the ancients was called Codex, from where the public tables are called codices. And even today, according to an ancient tradition, the ships that transport provisions through the Tiber are called codicariae. May the fact that Valerius Corvinus was the first who conquered Messina and the first of the Valerius family who was nicknamed Messana, upon adopting the name of the conquered city, and as people gradually changed the letters, they called him Messala, also come to the case in good time. Aren't you also going to allow someone to attend to the fact that Lucius Sulla was the first who offered loose lions in the circus, when until then they were offered tied, once King Bacchus had sent archers to shoot them down? Let us also leave him this in good time. Does it not also have some positive interest that Pompey was the first who presented the fight of 18 elephants in the circus, confronting them, as in battle, with innocent men, the main figure of the city, and among the ancient figures, according to fame, of extraordinary goodness, considered a glorious kind of spectacle to annihilate men with new methods? Do they fight to the death? It is insufficient. Do they wound each other? It is insufficient. Let them be crushed by the enormous bulk of some animals. It was preferable that such facts fell into oblivion, so that no powerful person would learn them later and envy a little human action. Alas, how much fog a great prosperity throws over our minds! He believed then to be above nature, when he threw so many heaps of unhappy men to beasts born under another sky, when he provoked a war between such unequal animals, when he shed abundant blood in the sight of the Roman people, he, who was soon going to make it shed more. But that same man, later deceived by Alexandrian disloyalty, offered himself to be pierced by the last of the servants, with which he finally understood the absurd arrogance of his nickname. But, to return to the purpose from which I have deviated and show the useless zeal of some in identical questions, the same one as before recounted that Metellus, upon celebrating his triumph for having defeated the Carthaginians in Sicily, was the only one of all the Romans who carried 120 captured elephants before his chariot. That Sulla was the last of the Romans who enlarged the Pomerium, whose enlargement was customary among the ancients never for having annexed provincial territory, but italic. Is knowing this more useful than knowing that Mount Aventine is outside the Pomerium, as he affirmed for one of two reasons, either because the plebs had retreated there, or because, being in that place Remus taking the auspices, the birds did not appear favorable to him, and a series of countless things that are either false or similar to lies? Indeed, even if you grant that everything they say is in good faith, even if they write it down to corroborate it, whose aberrations will those details mitigate? Whose ambitions will they repress? Whom will they make more courageous? Whom more just? Whom more generous? Our Fabianus said that he sometimes doubted whether it was preferable not to be carried away by any eagerness for knowledge rather than to be entangled in these. Only those who are free for wisdom are leisurely men. Only they are alive, for they do not only preserve their life, they add any time to theirs. All the years that have unfolded before them are acquired for them. If we are not of the most ungrateful, we will recognize that the illustrious founders of venerable doctrines were born for us. They organized their life for us. Thanks to the work of others, we see ourselves led to the most beautiful facts taken from the darkness to the light. No era is forbidden to us. We are admitted in all of them. And if our greatness of spirit pleases us to exceed the narrowness of human insufficiencies, we have a lot of time where to extend ourselves. It is possible for us to debate with Socrates, to doubt with Carneades, to calm down with Epicurus, to conquer the nature of man with the Stoics, to surpass it with the Cynics. Since nature allows us to extend ourselves to participate in any era, how can we not wholeheartedly dedicate ourselves, leaving this ephemeral and perishable temporal transit to the things that are unlimited, eternal, common with the best? those who run around from one compliment to another, who annoy themselves and others when they have already gone quite mad, when they have gone through the thresholds of everyone every day and have not overlooked any open door, when they have circulated their interested greetings through the most diverse houses. What proportion of people in such an immense city and divided by multiple passions will they be able to visit? How many will be those whose sleep or softness or discourtesy denies them entry? How many those who, after making them suffer for a long time, will put them aside with a feigned urgency? How many will avoid going out through the atrium crowded with clients and will escape through secret passages of the house, as if deceiving were not more discourteous than rejecting? How many, half asleep and bloated by the drunkenness of the night before, while those unhappy people interrupt their own sleep to watch over that of others, will repeat with a shameless yawn the name that has been whispered to them 1,000 times, barely opening their lips? Think that those who every day want to be more intimate with Zeno, with Pythagoras and with Democritus and the other masters of good knowledge, with Aristotle and Theophrastus, are occupied in authentic obligations. None of these will fail to be free, none will fail to dismiss happier, more satisfied with himself, the one who comes to him. None will consent to anyone leaving his side empty-handed. At night, during the day, they can be visited by all mortals. None of these will induce you to die. All will teach you. None of these will exhaust your years. They will add theirs to yours. Among these, conversation with none will be dangerous, friendship with none fatal, relationship with none burdensome. You will achieve everything you want from them. It will not be because of them that you do not take everything you can seize. What happiness, what beautiful old age awaits the one who has included himself in the clientele of these men. He will have people with whom to deliberate about the most trivial and the most fundamental questions, whom to consult every day about himself, by whom to hear the truth without offense, to be praised without flattery, to whose likeness to become. We usually say that it was not in our hands what parents fell to our lot, that they were given to us by chance. But it is possible for us to be born for ourselves at our own discretion. There are families of illustrious minds. Choose in which one you want to be welcomed. You will be adopted not only for the name, but also for the goods themselves, which you will not have to guard with avarice and meanness. They will become greater as you share them with more people. They will facilitate the path to eternity for you and will raise you up to a position from which no one can be dislodged. This is the only system to prolong mortality, moreover, to transform it into immortality. Positions, monuments, everything that ambition has imposed with its decrees or has built with its works, quickly collapses. Nothing ceases to tear down and stir up a prolonged old age. On the contrary, it cannot cause damage to the things that wisdom has immortalized. No age will erase them, none will diminish them. The following, and that which will always come later, will contribute something to the veneration. Since of course envy is found in the vicinity, we admire what is located in the distance with more sincerity. The life of the wise man, then, is very extensive. The same limits as to others do not constrain him. Only he frees himself from the laws of the human race. All the centuries are at his service as to a god. A time has passed, he seizes it with memory. It is on top, he uses it. It is going to arrive, he anticipates it. The meeting of all times in a single one lengthens his life. Brief and overly anxious is the life of those who forget the past things, neglect the present ones, and feel fear for the future ones. When they have arrived at the last ones, they understand late, unhappy, that they have been busy all that time doing nothing. You do not have to think that it is demonstrated that they have a long life with the argument that they sometimes invoke death. Their senselessness disturbs them with indecisive sentiments that even incur in that which gives them fear. They often desire death precisely because they fear it. Nor do you have to think that it is an argument in favor of their living a long time the fact that the day often seems long to them, that, while the moment set for dinner arrives, they complain that the hours pass slowly. Indeed, if their occupations ever leave them free, abandoned in leisure, they become uneasy and do not know how to organize or spend it. Thus, they launch themselves into any chore, and the whole intervening interval becomes heavy for them. Just, by Hercules, as when the date of a gladiatorial combat has been published or when they await the one set for some other spectacle or entertainment, they want to skip the intermediate days. Any deadline for what they await is long for them. However, the instant they long for is brief, and rushed and even shorter through their fault. For they pass from one intention to another and cannot concentrate on a single desire. The days are not long for them, but hateful. But, on the contrary, how short the nights they spend in the arms of prostitutes or in the company of wine seem to them. Hence also the delirium of the poets, who with their fantasies foment human aberrations, to whom it seemed that Jupiter, captivated by the pleasures of coitus, doubled a night. What other thing but to inflame our vices is it to assign the gods as their promoters, and to give the sick passion a license justified by the example of divinity? Can the nights not seem very short to those who buy them so dearly? They lose the day by waiting for the night by fearing the dawn. Thank you for listening to this audiobook until the end. If you enjoyed the content, we invite you to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. This way, you won't miss our next publications.